Coming up in mere moments, we'll have a conversation with Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. She's been under fire for a comment she made to Ilhan Omar, a comment she has since apologized for. None of us are perfect, even though Socialist Democrats pretend they are. There's a move by left-wing extremists in the Congress to remove the Congresswoman for her lone comment. One group is the Congressional Black Communists. These are the same folks who won't allow Republican blacks to be part of their so-called Black Caucus. They're hypocrites, just like the majority of their anti-American left-wing party. And I, your liberty-loving Latino, am sick and tired of having to put up with leftist double standards. Socialist Democrats can't live up to their own standards. A walk down memory lane in tonight's preamble. Congressman Paul Gosar was censured by these left-wing maniacs. His crime, tweeting out a cartoon of him fighting Joe Biden and the nitwit Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Nancy Pelosi pretended that Gosar was somehow normalizing violence. Pelosi's comments are even more ridiculous when you consider that her side has actually been conducting violence for the better part of 3 years as the Democrats' militant arms of Antifa, BLM, and other extremist groups have looted, burned, beaten, and killed their way through our streets. The most recent example of the Democrats' dangerous and deadly rhetoric was seen in Waukesha, Wisconsin. A BLM devotee allegedly drove his car into a Christmas parade, killing 6 people. Another BLM Democrat said the attack could be the start of a revolution. But he and other violent thugs were only listening to their leaders in media and government.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. Is he?
That's not all. There's more. There's much,
I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
You get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
But it's not just violence that defines the modern-day Socialist Democrat Party. They're also bigots. In a recent tweet, controversial leftist Ilhan Omar resorted to the age-old stereotypes about Jews using money to buy influence when she wrote about AIPAC. It's about the Benjamins, baby. She apologized, but this is just one in a series of bigoted tweets. Ilhan Omar wrote about this as well. Another Jew-bashing tweet claimed that Israel had hypnotized the world, imploring Allah to awaken the people, and them seeing the evil doing that the Jewish state was about. And yet another Jew-bashing tweet. Omar bashed America for being allied with Israel by suggesting that the alliance gave Israel political influence. Omar was joined by her other anti-American goon squad members in getting all the House Democrats to defund the Iron Dome defense system. Now, one might think AOC wanted to give radicalized Islamic terrorists a chance to kill more Jews when she tweeted that, quote, the United States should not be rubber stamping weapons sales to the Israeli government as they deploy resources to target international media outlets, schools, hospitals, humanitarian missions, and civilian sites for bombing, end quote. AOC left out the part that the terrorists use those sites as human shields to attack and kill Jews. Guess she didn't feel the need to reveal or apologize for her misleading and bigoted statements. Aside from being bigots and promoting violence, the left is also vile. Ilhan Omar compared the United States and our democratically elected, Democrat ally, Israel, to terrorist organizations like Hamas and the Taliban. Rashida M.F. Tlaib earned her nickname that I gave her when she, with the class that she always has displayed, said this about President Trump.
bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't. Because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach the mother.
In an effort to downplay the role that radicalized Islamic fundamentalist terrorists played in the 9/11 attacks, Ilhan Omar sought to protect the bloodthirsty instruments of the worst terror attack in our history on American soil. Watch.
CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
Some people did something? Socialist Democrat Party is full of and embraces these kinds of degenerates. They promote bigotry, violence, and crassness. The vast majority of them never apologize for their disgusting behavior. I just thought you all should see who these people really are as they push to impose standards that they themselves can't or won't live up to. I hope Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy are watching. Because if you're trying to please these people, I got news for you both, you never will until you surrender to them. Given their low brow and low rent demeanor, I wouldn't suggest it. Now, let's get to your top stories. Biden losing control of the pandemic, that's something we've all seen, and the numbers are now providing proof, all the proof Americans and the world need that Biden is not competent for his position. Another one bites the dust as we have a look at what's going on in Kamala Harris's world, or what's actually going out in Kamala Harris's world. We'll explain. And Democrat hypocrisy. That's where we begin tonight here on the Chris Salcedo Show. Democrats can't meet their own standards. Their constant calls for violence, intimidation, and threats go unchecked by congressional leadership while they punish Republicans for slights that are imagined or pale in comparison. Joining me now to discuss is Colorado Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Congresswoman, it's always great to see you. Merry Christmas. Unlike most leftists, you actually apologized for something you said. I know nobody's perfect. For the folks who don't know what transpired, tell us what happened between you and controversial Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Sure. Well, I did make a statement to the Muslim community, and I'm happy to catch you up on what happened. But really, I do want to make it a priority to take a moment and thank the millions of Americans, especially my constituents who have shown their love and support for me over the last few days. I've received positive calls, emails, and letters, and they've meant the world to me. I've received a couple of calls from President Trump, and I really want to say thank you to everyone. It has just meant so much to me. Of course, I've received similar phone calls to the one that Ilhan Omar presented at her so-called press conference, and I do want to say that that's absolutely out of line. The death threats that come to members of Congress, it's unnecessary, but this is why I support our brave men and women in law enforcement. So they are there to actually do something about these crazy people who make these threatening phone calls. But Chris, the truth is, I've moved on from this controversy. I've made a public statement. I made a personal phone call to Ilhan to make things right. She hung up on me, really showing her character. Of course, you've heard she rejected my attempt to make amends and ended the call. So I've moved on. The 3rd District didn't vote me into office because I'm perfect. They voted me in because I promised to fight for their freedoms and secure their rights, and that's exactly what I'm focused on. Chris, I'm also focused on delivering results for my constituents back home, and we have to get these American priorities back in order. Energy production needs to be back on track. Active forest management. We have a supply chain crisis. We have an invasion at our southern border, and the list goes on and on. But the Democrat playbook is to get caught up in these distractions because they do not have policy to run on for the American people.
Well, as we just showed in the preamble, a lot of the socialist Democrats who have been calling for violence and doing a lot of these things, they didn't have the class that you showed in making an apology. Many of them have not apologized for what they have done. Let me give you another example. The latest example of violence comes from Senator Jeanne Shaheen. Here she is calling for a, quote, revolution if Roe versus Wade is overturned.
I think if you want to see a revolution, go ahead, outlaw Roe v. Wade, and see what the response is of the public, particularly young people.
Now, if these socialist Democrats want to punish you in any way, if they were consistent, if they were credible, wouldn't they punish their own, like Socialist Senator Jeanne Shaheen there?
Absolutely, but as the saying goes, if the Democrats did not have double standards, they would have no standards at all. I have been calling them out on their hypocrisy since I arrived in Washington, D.C., and that's exactly what I will continue to do. So when it comes to me, redemption actually means something to me. As a Christian woman, redemption and forgiveness, those are the pillars to my faith. And so maybe redemption and forgiveness don't mean as much to those on the other side of the aisle as they do to me. I didn't apologize to the Muslim community to appease Ilhan Omar or the rest of the squad. I did that for me and my faith, my constituents, the people I was here to serve. And I certainly don't want to offend anyone's religious beliefs. But that's where I'm coming from personally. And I don't think that we have those same standards on the other side of the aisle. I see how vile and disgusting the comments are, the anti-Semitic, anti-American, anti-police rhetoric that comes from the other side on a regular basis. In fact, that's why Ilhan Omar hung up on me. She was demanding more of a public statement from me, and because what I did wasn't good enough, she wanted me to come crawling to her on my knees begging for forgiveness. And when I pushed back on that, I said, if there's going to be a public statement, it needs to come from you to the American people for your anti-American, anti-Semitic, anti-police rhetoric. And now she is receiving, unfortunately, the worst of threats to her office. And in the meantime, the past couple of years, she has spent that time demonizing the men and women in blue who will protect her from those very threats. I want them to be fully funded, and I want them to be here for us all.
No, it's true. She is actually trying to defund the very people who would actually protect her. Of course, yes, she's got enough money now to where she can afford to protect herself, unlike her constituents who don't have that kind of coin. I wanted to get to you to weigh in on the constitutional crisis at our southern border. Team Biden finally agreeing to follow a Supreme Court order to re-implement the Remain in Mexico policy. This after Mr. Biden has allowed millions of illegal aliens to cross the border into our nation this year, many of them with the China virus. Should the Republican Party have made a stronger stand, in your view, in particular for the Constitution and the separation of powers, particularly in the Senate? I mean, we're told that the Constitution is a pretty big deal to Senate Republicans. What do you think? Should they have made a stronger stand over there where they have some power?
Well, you know, we are seeing one-party rule for 1 year, and this is what has come to bear. We've all come to bear from that. Of course, we would always like to see more of a fight, especially in the Senate. We have some fantastic senators there, but we need more of them. And I would say in the House, that's the same. We have great representatives who want to do a good job and govern for the American people and protect the American people, but we don't have the numbers to do that. We're just 5 short. And so, you know, January 20th, construction of the border wall was canceled by the Biden regime, and that's not saving any American any money. There's nearly $5 million each day that is spent in contracts to build the wall that is not being built. So they're not saving us anything by not building this wall. We're having 2 million illegal aliens pour into our country, invade our country, and that's why I have legislation like the We're Not Paying You to Break Our Laws Act, because now there's talk of illegal aliens getting $450,000 apiece for breaking our laws and coming into our country. So there's a lot that's taking place, and the American people are the ones who are being punished. There is a Fauci-funded Chinese virus that has taken over the world, and we have an open southern border and a complete invasion taking place. No vaccine mandates, no testing. People are shipped anywhere in the United States that they say they know someone. And meanwhile, our children are masked in school. People are still unemployed, losing their jobs, losing their businesses. And then, of course, the unconstitutional medical mandates that are coming from this regime, these vaccine mandates. I've had military personnel, even in my office just today, talking about how many people will retire from their active service positions because of these mandates. This is a national security threat.
Congresswoman, you took me right where I wanted to go. As you know, Mr. Biden has lost control of this pandemic. The numbers prove it. He unveiled new China virus restrictions earlier today. Listen to this.
Today, I'm back to announce our action plan to battle COVID-19 this winter. Not that any of us are surprised any of you, because it's the combined advice from all of you that we developed this plan. And it doesn't include shutdowns or lockdowns, but widespread vaccinations and boosters and testing and a lot more.
So he screws up, we got to pay, lose our rights. He's also urging businesses to implement the vaccine mandate despite the courts around the country blocking it. How can a lawless and corrupt occupier of the Oval Office like this guy, how can he continue to get away with this, so determined to steal our rights to make up for his lack of ability to govern?
You know, this is what we've been battling all year. You know, we're even coming up on this continuing resolution to fund the federal government. And I think that that perfectly encapsulates all of this. Sadly, Democrats in charge don't want to address the crises that are taking place and these unconstitutional mandates. They don't want to curb the federal government's out-of-control spending. But the main reason I'm opposing to voting for this CR is that it wouldn't fund Biden's unconstitutional vaccine mandates. That's a non-starter for me. I refuse to fund a tyrannical operation that would fine and fire individuals based on unconstitutional medical tyranny. You know, this is not right to punish the American people for this. Remove the vaccine mandate, and I will be willing to have a serious conversation about voting for the continued resolution to fund the federal government, but I will not fund a federal vaccine mandate.
Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for your time here in the Chris Salcedo Show. We'll talk again soon.